Вітаємо, дорогі глядачі, на українській телемережі «Контакт». І знов наша велика приємність вітати тут на наших екранах сенатора Святослава Кучера, який керує важливими справами по відношенню до оборони України в канадському Сенаті. Welcome, вітаємо, пане сенаторе, до нас на телевізійній програмі «Контакт». І it would be kind of nice to hear from you. We're hearing that the Senate's working on issues of Russian disinformation, which is the topic that you and I spoke about still back at the festival during our last TV recording. So welcome to the show, Senator, and if you could give us some maybe inside information about how you're steering this through the Canadian Senate.
То привіт і дуже дякую. Я буду говорити по-англійськи тепер. Або пів на пів, може.
Пів на пів is best.
Пів на пів, то теж добре. Всі знають про російську дезінформацію. And I think about it as three different types. І це я буду по-англійськи говорити, because по-українськи doesn't make sense. То we have Russian bot. You know what a bot is on social media. Russian bot means someone paid you, so you're also Russian bot. I like this because it sounds the same. It's really cool. Yeah. And the third one is Russian idiot. So instead of idiot, it's idibot, and they're different. So the Russian bots are direct disinformation, which is coming from the Kremlin bot farms, which invades all of our social media and tries to create division in our society. The Russian bot are the people that knowingly take money from the Kremlin, from Russia, to do the same thing in Canada. And we had the tenant media scandal, but there's more than that. And then the Russian idiot, where the people keep promoting Russian propaganda, Russian disinformation, but may not realize that they're doing it because the Russians have snowed their ability to think critically. So those are the three areas. Now, I have brought into the Senate, and thank you to the Security and Defense Committee, on which I am privileged to sit, a study on Russian disinformation in Canada, specifically on what is Russia doing for disinformation in Canada, and more importantly, because we know a lot of what they are doing, what are the effective ways to counter this? How can Canada step up and counter this? So the study is now started in the Senate. We'll adjourn for the Christmas period, but when we return, we'll continue the study in the Senate. And I'm certain that the Senate does the good work that it does. We will come up with some very good suggestions for the Canadian government of how to counter Russian disinformation.
I think that's excellent. I think we all agree to that. Now, what about over the last months, the global changes that have happened? To what extent, like how does defense of Ukraine look today as opposed to, let's say, 4 months ago when we chatted?
Oh, дай Боже. Yeah, that huge differences, and all after the election of Mr. Trump. And so with this comes huge global uncertainty as what is going to happen in the geopolitical sphere. On one hand, Mr. Trump is clearly very close to Putin. On the other hand, his stance sometimes will be what is best for Mr. Trump. So we don't know which way he will go. The other concern, however, is Mr. Trump has appointed many people to potential positions. Whether they get confirmed in their appointments, we'll see. But he's appointed many people to very high positions in the security and military parts of the United States that are known to have very strong ties to Russia and are Russian sympathizers. And if any of your listeners are interested to go on the website Vatnik Soup, VATNIK, Soup, you will see there identified many of these people and their Russian ties. So this is a concern. Now, that also, we have to think, how can we counter this? And the Baltic states, I have to give them huge credit, have already taken big steps. So Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland have come together in an organization to support Ukraine. And so that they're working very closely together to support Ukraine. And in fact, Denmark has the largest per capita GDP spending in support of Ukraine. Who would know that, right? They do. Well, the other part of that, however, is that we now see weakness in Russia that we've not seen before, and that was happening in Syria. So the Syrian government fell. They were a puppet government of Russia, but Russia did nothing or couldn't do anything to uphold it. So now the question is the West watching? Because now oil pipelines theoretically could be built through that territory to Europe, so Europe doesn't have to buy Russian oil anymore. Okay, so that would take a huge chunk out of Putin's revenue. So we're seeing some concerning and uncertain things, and we're seeing some hopeful things. It will remain to be what will transpire with that.
Now back to Canada a little bit. What can Canada be doing better, differently to assist in Ukraine's military victory? We know that you're working on the Senate for disinformation, but strictly on a military basis, is there anything that Canada can do better?
That's a very, very important question, and the answer is yes, and we can do it quickly. So, and this is where your listeners could get involved, and I'll tell you why at the end. Because since the Budapest Agreement fell apart, and to refresh people's memories, that was when Ukraine signed away their control of nuclear weapons in return for Western securities of their sovereignty. When Russia moved into Crimea, the West did nothing. When Russia moved into Donbass, the West did very little. When Russia moved into Ukraine on the war, the West did a bit, but always not enough. Okay, so Ukraine has learned a lesson, a bitter lesson, and I'm going to say it here: Ukraine can't always count on the West to protect its sovereignty. So it has to be able to build its own capacity to protect its sovereignty, which means building up its armaments industry. And it's got a good start on that, on drones already, on some missiles, the Nautilus missile, for example, some good ammunition starts. But now there is a really innovative program. And again, Denmark, I'm impressed with the Danes. Denmark has come up and created this program. It's government to industry. And what happens is that the government, a Western government, flows money through the government of Ukraine to the Ukrainian armaments industry, not designated for any one thing, but Ukraine can choose where that money goes because they know what they need. And Denmark has done a complete audit of the financial processes. They're transparent. They have Deloitte and Touche, which is overseeing all this. They have sent actually teams of experts to the factories to ensure that the factories meet European standard. They all meet the standard. The Danes even have military attaches attached to this project to go and do spot checks to make sure it's all being done right. Now, Denmark has invested millions of euros. The European Union has invested millions of euros. Now, Norway and Sweden both have announced that they will be investing millions of euros to help Ukraine build its armaments industry. It won't give Ukraine everything Ukraine needs, but it's a huge step. So one of the things that I'm trying to do is to get Canada to take that million and a bit Canadian dollars that we have still sitting there that's been designated for Ukraine and run it through Denmark and go to the government of Ukraine and use that money so that Ukraine can build its own armaments industry using the money to build what Ukraine needs, not giving them our secondhand stuff. You know, the reality is that for our drones, for example, Ukraine is so far ahead of Canada now in the drone technology because they've had to be. They've learned, they've innovated. So we don't need to give them our old drones. We need to give them the money so they can make their own new drones. So this is something that Canada can step up to. And your listeners, you know, write a letter, not an email, write a letter to Minister Blair saying, Minister Blair, we want you to support Ukraine through the Denmark project. He'll know what that is. I know that he's interested in doing that. He's a good guy. He wants to do the right thing. So you can help him do the right thing by encouraging him.
Wow. Well, I think we're on one hand, we're almost into the end of the third year of the war. On the other hand, it's fantastic to hear that people like you in positions of influence are creating new valid opportunities that are out there that can ensure, not like up until now, to help Ukraine not lose, but this time to help Ukraine actually win the war.
Правда.
Правда.
Слава Україні.
So we wish you the best. Senator Kutcher, дорогі глядачі, це була розмова з сенатором Святославом Кучером Канадського Сенату на тему оборони України і що Канада може краще зробити для України. І вертаємося до програми відразу після наступних реклам. Senator Kutcher, wishing you all the best. Thank you very, very much for being with us again.
Тоже дуже дякую.